intersection of good drinks, good music, and good times. This is Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations.
I've been laughing and having a good time before we even hit the record button, so I know we're in for another great episode. We have a guy that is from Texas, spends a little bit of time up in Tennessee and Nashville, and we're going to be talking a whole lot of music in his life. So let's just get right to it and welcome in. He's got a new two-part album coming out in February and April called The Honkiest of Tonkers. He's a country artist, songwriter. Let's welcome in Garrett Bradford.
Thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and making me laugh even before we started. So, like I said, I think we're going to have a little bit of fun on this one. And you know, you've had a lot happen in your life, and we're going to dive into that here in a little bit. But this is Bar Conversations, and I know I think you're behaving yourself these days. But I know you're from Texas, so I grabbed a little Still Austin, and the artist is what this one they call the Rye. So I thought that was fitting for you. But you know, this is Bar Conversation, so I got to ask this: what's your go-to drink these days? Have you switched off that stuff and gone to coffee? What's the deal?
Man, my go-to drink would probably be Red Bull. Yeah, I switched off of the whiskey. We was talking before whether I had a favorite type, and I said I love them all so much that I've had to dial it back a little bit. So I would say right now I'm coffee, energy drinks, and which I only drink a couple of those a day. But I like the Fresca. For some reason, if I'm sitting around in the evening, that's been holding me over, keeping me off the beer. And the whiskey is those little Fresca carbonated water drinks or whatever they are. They're good, man. I like those things.
I was gonna say my wife bought some of those because she's been trying to behave herself and be better at what she's drinking and not doing any sodas or anything like that, and she's enjoyed those. Now you mentioned the beer and all that. Do you ever do like the hoppy waters or like a non-alcoholic type thing or you just were like, no, I don't even want to give myself that thought. We're gonna go Fresca.
Yeah, I haven't ventured into that yet. I mean, maybe if I really get the itch too bad one of these days, I'll have to go there. But I'm afraid that's just one section too close. That's just one step too close because they sell that stuff right by the real stuff in the cooler. So I just try not to even open that cooler nowadays.
Hey, you're a smart man. You're a smart man. And now you mentioned the coffee too. Now, have you like dove deep into it and got like coffee bean blends in a blender, or are you just like give it straight black?
Folgers. I'm just a Folgers man. My dad would always be like, Folgers is the best coffee, son. Just drink Folgers. So I'm gonna stick with that.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Simple, straightforward, and it'll get the job done. And I mentioned you're doing this music thing, but you didn't always when you were growing up. Yeah, I think you did a little bit of music, but I think you loved a few other things too.
Yeah.
And you did some traveling with the rodeos, and I believe you tried to hold on for at least 8 seconds for dear life, right?
So I got on a few bulls, but my relation to rodeo is that my parents raised buck and stock growing up here on our ranch where I'm at right now, Weatherford, Texas. So that was kind of the water I swam in as if I was a fish as a young kid, the rodeo and Western world. And I loved that aspect of it, just the farming and ranching side, and then going and taking our stock to the rodeos. So that was the cool experience that I got to do, even as a young kid, getting to go some of the biggest and best rodeos in the world with my dad from here to Calgary, Canada, and everywhere in between. And taking those bulls and broncs and, getting to be up behind the chutes, and it's the full experience without the injuries. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
I was going to say, smart man.
I'm kind of tall too, and at least for bull riding, it seems to help if you're not tall. I don't know if it's something to do with the center of gravity, but if you'll notice, I was actually at a PBR last night here in Fort Worth, and at the Fort Worth Rodeo up there, they have a PBR event just one night, which was last night. It was all bull riders, and we were kind of getting tickled. No offense to the bull riders out there, but they all walked out, and there was one guy, he looked like a giant compared to the rest of them, and they show their stats on screen right before they ride. And we're like, I wonder how tall that guy is. Gosh, he looks like a giant. And they got to him, and he was like 6 foot. but he looked like he was 7 feet because all the other guys were way shorter. So we got a tickle out of that. But yeah, man, I think it helps to be have a little lower center of gravity getting on those bulls.
Well, and like you said, you were a smart man, and never injured yourself. But you talked about growing up on the ranch. What was that like? Doing that and just having that life also in Texas, which is that's kind of the rodeo culture down there is huge too.
Yeah, I mean it's a really unique and cool way to grow up. I would say just you tend to learn a lot of values and things like that are really important to me now. And as I've gotten older and traveled around and met so many people, I mean, you see the same values in other things too. We don't have a monopoly on working hard or being a man of your word. That exists everywhere, but it's just it's a great way to learn those things. And as I've gotten out and seen more of the world, it makes me more and more thankful for like where I grew up and how I grew up, I guess, because it's just a really cool way to grow up and to be outside every day. And then of course we have a ranch here, so on top of just the ranching and the cows and the horses and all that, getting to hunt and fish. I mean, I hunted deer here. I'd be able to walk from my house to my deer stand when I was a kid. And, my parents had just turned me loose with a 22 from the time I was 6 or 7 years old. And I think you learn responsibility and independence, that kind of thing. And I just really cherish my childhood and be able to grow up the way I did because it was awesome. I hope that I don't have any kids yet, but when I do, I want them to grow up in a similar way, at least as close as I can get.
Well, and like you said, being able to be outdoors, do all that stuff. I'm guessing you really ended up getting an appreciation then, for hunting and fishing and just
Yeah,
everything that comes with that.
absolutely, man. I mean, when I was actually before I started playing music, and even after as a kid, I would watch those hunting TV shows, and that's all I wanted to do. And I used to write letters to Mossy Oak and Realtree and Rapala Lures and trying to get them to give me a show. I still got I don't even think my parents sent some of them when I was really little. I think they kept them because they wanted to keep them, for their
Hmm.
scrapbook or whatever. But my mom still got a few of those letters, and I'd pitch them on my show ideas.
I was gonna say you're gonna have there's a few of the country guys that have some shows. I mean, was it
Yeah.
Lucas Hogue and some of them? You're gonna just be accidentally bump into them and be like, "Hey, I'm good to go on a hunting trip. I'm fine with that."
Dang right, man. I would love to. I've always thought too. It's like, man, if I ever got super successful and famous and I was playing these stadium tours, I would just be putting out a memo like, man, I'm going to be in the city playing Saturday night at the whatever stadium and I want to go hunting Sunday morning. So give me your offers. Because whenever you're famous, man, hey, you get to hunt everywhere, man. You get to shoot the cool stuff and go out to the best places and they don't even charge you. I was talking to somebody a while back. My buddy Jason Michael Carroll, he's an awesome country artist, and he's had #1 hits and stuff. And he's like, it's funny, man. Whenever you get a little notoriety and you actually start making money, people start giving you stuff for free once you can finally afford it.
Well, then you get to keep more of it.
Exactly. I haven't reached that point yet. I ain't getting nothing for free yet, but we'll get there maybe.
I was gonna say you keep making the music you're doing. I think there's a chance of that. And you mentioned that you grew up on the ranch. Your parents were big into the horses and that kind of stuff. But what about music? Were they big into music? Was there any like? Did you grow up in a musical family? Where did your
Not at
love of music
all.
come from?
I mean, they listened to music, and even that, neither of my parents, until I really started getting into it, like they weren't super music people. I mean, my dad would have the classic country radio station on, my mom would have the Christian station on, and just never moved. The dial never turned. And the way I kind of got introduced to, at least to singing, was through children's choir at church. I had a children's choir director. I always give her credit, Miss Isla Simmons, because when I first went into the children's choir, my mom made me go, and I was like, I don't want to sing. This ain't cool. This ain't tough. Being you're a little kid. Oh, I mean, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, And Isla would, so I would try to sing bad on purpose. And Miss Isla, she would just not let me do it. She would make me get up in front of the class or the whole group and make us all sing, but she'd really hammer me. And she's like, you're gonna have to do it. We're gonna make you, you're gonna have to sing. And she would put me in like lead, like solo roles. Eventually I caved in, and she really pushed me. And I don't think she had any idea. I mean, at that time that I would pursue it, but I give her so much credit. In fact, she commented on a little Facebook post about the last single that I put out, about how she loved it. And I said, well, it wouldn't exist without you, because there's no way, if I wouldn't have started singing then, that I'd ever even thought about learning to play guitar, which happened when I was about 12 years old, and my uncle moved up here from East Texas, and he can play about 3 or 4 songs. He's got a guitar. He had a Hank Williams songbook, and it show you where to put your fingers on the guitar to make the chords. And I was like, man, I got to do this. So I heard him play, and I said, I got to do it. So I would walk up the road. He moved about a half a mile from where we're at right here, and I'd walk up there and grab his guitar and just try to learn from that book. And then eventually, when my dad figured I was going to stick with it, we went to the pawn shop, and he got me a guitar, and I wrote my first song that day. It just always felt like, from the second I had a guitar, I wanted to write songs. Didn't even, it just seemed like the thing to do. I don't know. I have friends and stuff who started playing, but then they didn't start writing until they were in their 20s or their late teens. And for me, it was the same. It was simultaneous for me, I guess.
Well, and it's wild to think that you were doing that at like age 11, but when you think back to those times when you were singing, I know your teacher, your children's choir, she kept pushing you. When did you go, okay, this isn't that bad and this is kind of cool? Like, when was that moment where you're like, all right?
I think probably whenever, I mean, I thought I got cool with the singing and stuff in children's choir. I mean, at that time, by the time I started playing guitar, I would have been out of it, because I think it only goes to like 9 or 10 years old. It's by grade. I don't remember, but I definitely caved in and just went all in doing the children's choir thing as a little kid. And we'd do the musicals and the sing-alongs and things like that. And by the I don't remember when exactly it happened, but by the time that I got out of the children's choir, like, I was volunteering to do solos and things like that. But I really started loving it whenever I started playing guitar, and I started playing an instrument, and that's when it felt real to me. Because singing in choir was just like, oh, this is a fun thing to do. But when I started playing guitar and singing, and of course, my parents and my little friends, my uncle, they would, oh, that's so good. And it was probably terrible. I know it was terrible, but they thought it was cool that I was learning to do that. And that's kind of when I decided, hey, this is cool. I want to keep doing this.
Well, and I was going to ask you too. When you look back on those first songs that you wrote, do you still have any of those? And like, and how good were they?
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. The first one I ever wrote there was a mine, and you might know based off where you live up there, you might remember this better than me, like Sago,
Uh-huh.
West Virginia, or somewhere, and there's this mine collapsed. And I remember I just got my guitar, and that was all over the news. These miners were trapped there, and I wrote a song, and I forget what uh, I don't even remember what the title was, but I still know it. I can still sing it to you. And I hadn't thought about it in years, and I thought about it a while back and played it, and I was like shocked at how good it was. But then for about 5 years after that, my songs were terrible. So there was just this little glimmer of hope at the beginning, I guess. I remember when I played that song for my parents, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, that's actually a decent song." I mean, it would never be a hit or anything, but for a 12-year-old looking back, I was like, okay, there's a little meat on the bone there. But then I took a nosedive after that. I still got those songs too, and I was like, oh, they make me cringe, but they're funny.
Well, and sometimes you got to get those bad ones. It's a learning process. You got to get through
Yeah.
those, and if you can stay with it, look what happened. Look what you're doing now.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you got to get the bad ones out to get to the good ones. It's still that way. I mean, I'd like to think that I figured out enough about songwriting. I think everybody does if they've done it a while. Like where they're not just going to be horrible, but then they'll be just mediocre, just like, yeah, that's not it. And I still write songs like that all the time. A lot of times I don't finish them because usually I can tell about halfway through this ain't it. So I'll try to pivot. So I've got a lot of bad half songs from the last 5 or 10 years.
Well, and who knows? Maybe there might be a lyric in there that sparks something else. And for you, when you mentioned your dad loving the classic country, and your mom loving Christian music, and being in the church and everything. What music did you grow up on like that you loved, maybe early on, and then maybe even as you grew older? But who made an impact on you?
Like traditional country music is absolutely still to this day. I mean, that's 99% of what I listen to. And at the time, like my dad, they used to sell those Time Life. There's an ad, an infomercial on TV, and it was the CDs of the different country hits from I think it went from the 50s to like the 80s or 90s at that. It would have probably been to the 90s at that time. And he got me those, and I cherished those things. And man, I would listen to unless I was in the truck with my dad. This is before Spotify and all that, before smartphones and all that. I feel like kids these days probably wouldn't get it, but I just listened to whatever my dad had on in the truck, which was always classic country. And then I got home, I would just comb through those. Then it's a big box set of CDs. There's probably 300 or 400 songs on there, and I wore them out. I literally all those CDs except the '80s. I guess I didn't like the '80s country as much. That one still works, but the other ones they're just worn out, man. So that was probably, and then I would say Christian music for sure was um, probably in my early teens and stuff. I listened to a lot of that. It's what my mom listened to, and if they were going to buy me a CD, it was either going to be classic country or Christian. No Snoop Dogg, none of that. So that's what I was exposed to, I guess.
You're missing out.
Yeah, I know. I've caught up on that. I've caught up on that. Whenever I went to college, I found all this music. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. I had like a 1 year rap phase, but that's about all I listened to. But then I kind of got back to my roots a little bit.
Well, and for you, and clearly loving music so much that you were writing at a young age and loving to play the guitar and sing. When did you kind of realize like, hey, I could maybe do what those guys I'm listening to are doing? Like, when did it kind of click that maybe this is something you could pursue?
That's a tough question because I would say, in some ways, I didn't fully get that mindset until probably the year 2020. But um, I realized, oh, I can write songs. And then I met a guy who's super impactful to me, a guy named Dan Roberts, and he's a songwriter. He wrote like Beaches of Cheyenne with Garth Brooks, and his son and I are best friends. And they moved to Texas from Nashville. And I would go over to his house, and that was when I first got introduced to like songwriting as a career. Before that, it just hadn't even crossed my mind. I mean, logically, somebody had to write the songs, but I just wasn't thinking about that. And I was kind of intimidated by that. He was so good, and I was just so green, and he was very encouraging and everything. But I think at the time I didn't see it as a viable, career path or anything. As I got older, I did a songwriting contest that the local radio station 92.1 put on, and I won it. I was 17, I think. And then Dan took me into the studio, and we actually did an album. And of course, at 18, you're like, this is going to be number one, and I'm going to be like the most famous guy in the world. I'm going to be rich and famous, and everybody's going to know these songs. Well, that didn't happen, and I think at that point I was just getting out of high school, and I was like, well, I'm going to keep doing this. And I was playing gigs at the time, and increasingly so as I got out of high school and got into college, because we have such a good music scene here in Texas. But it just wasn't a, I saw it as a passion that I loved. I mean, I've always written songs like it was my job. Just I just can't help myself. And a cool thing to do on the weekends, if I could get a gig, I could make a little bit of money. My friends could come. Some of the gals thought it was cool, so I was like, all right, this is going to be like my thing outside of work. Everybody's got their thing, golf or whatever. And really not until 2020 when I met Taylor Sheridan. I actually went over to his place. He created Yellowstone and all these TV shows. It was during season 1 of Yellowstone, which was not as big as it is now. And I went over there to do some tree work, which is something that I did ever since I got out of high school. I'd either be working on the ranch here or be doing tree work, and I still do it some days. If I get an offer I can't refuse, I won't turn it down, because I ain't exactly getting rich off the music yet. Let's just say that. But I got over there and just started talking to them. They just moved here and bought a ranch here, and we became friends. And over a course of 2 or 3 years, I never even told him I played music. But eventually he figured out, had me bring my guitar over and play him some songs. And like, he was the one that really inspired me to like really take this serious. He's like, I think you could really do this, Garrett, and I think it's a shame. He's like, I think it's a shame if you don't, because you love it and you're good enough at it that why wouldn't you try to do it? You don't want to just be cutting trees your whole life. I mean, if you do, that's fine, but that's not your passion. And having somebody of that caliber um, encourage me and believe in me, like, that was a huge thing for making me think, okay, well, maybe I could do this.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, when you have someone like that tell you that, like, was it like, I don't want to say an aha moment, but was it one where you're like, okay, maybe I can't, maybe all right, maybe I should try it. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
was that kind of the thought process there when someone, of his nature? I mean, he's done a few things,
Yeah, for sure.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, and like I say, I mean, it's not that there's never a point since I was 17 where I haven't been booking little shows around Texas and writing songs every day. But as far as doing it as a living and like trying to do it at a high level, um, that is when I was like, you know what, he is right. And I mean, I forget, exactly what the conversations were. It was a series of conversations. We spent a lot of time together over that first year or two that he moved here. And I think what really got to me was he's like, you don't want to be on your deathbed wishing that you'd done this. And he's so right. And kind of helping me have that bigger mindset for what I could do in life and who I could be, and not just being just an old boy from Weatherford that trims trees. And I was perfectly content with that, and I still am. If that ends up kind of being all that I am, I'd be proud to be that as well. But with the music, helping kindle those aspirations. And I remember having those aspirations as a kid, like I said, when I put out my first record. But when it didn't happen, I don't know. I think it's makes you feel insecure to put yourself out there, or it did for me at the time. It's like, man, what if I put this music out and everybody thinks it's terrible? But soon after I met him, within a year or two, I mean, I was going to the studio, recording again, and put my first song out in 2020, which was on Yellowstone, which is pretty awesome. Um, and is the song that he asked me to write. He's like, I got this idea for this scene, and he's very I don't want to say critical, but he's got his opinions on even on my music. I would play him songs sometimes, and he'd be like, "Yeah, that song's not very good, Garrett." And I play him another one, and he'd be like, "That's pretty good. That's pretty good." And some he'd be like, "That's great." So I got real kind of nervous, and I suppose imposter syndrome, or maybe I wasn't an imposter, because this is the #1 show in the country, and he's like, I got this idea. Let's see if you can write something that'll fit it. And I honestly thought there's no way. So I didn't. I waited 2 or 3 weeks and wrote the song, recorded an acoustic, what I called, which ended up being the final version, an acoustic demo out here in the barn, and sent it to him. And that was on a Tuesday. He called me the next day on Wednesday and said, "We're using the song on Sunday, buddy." And I'm like, "Wait, I got to go to the studio. This is." I've never even released music, much less something that I recorded myself. I'm like, no, I got it. He said, and then he told me what they were going to pay me. And I said, all right, Sunday it is.
I mean, but for those that don't know, that song was "This Way of Life." It aired on season 3. What was it like when that song? Obviously it's one thing you're doing all the back end of it. He tells you all that, but when it hits, you're watching the show or everyone that watched it. What was it like when it finally aired as part of that, and then kind of that aftermath?
Oh man, it was so in my mind I didn't know how the song was going to be used. I just knew they were going to use it. And I have a tendency to I'm not pessimistic, but maybe especially at that time I might have been a little bit. I'm like, at least in my mind I was like, they'll probably use like 10 seconds of it. And it's got a little guitar intro that sounds Western, and it's pretty cool. Like that's one of my proudest parts of the song is the intro guitar lick. Actually, I mean, I love the lyrics and everything, but I was like, they'll probably just use that, and then it'll fade out right when I start singing. And it came on right after the credits, and they played a minute and a half of the song, which got all the way, I think all the way through the first chorus. And I was watching, and they played it during a montage scene where there's no people talking over it or anything. They're just showing clips around the ranch and all this. And my song comes on, and I just remember, and they're still playing it. They're still playing it. They're still playing. Surely it's gonna cut off. Oh my gosh, they're still. And I'm looking around. I was with my who I call my sister. She's like my sister. I'm an only child, but she's my god sister and a couple of friends. And I was just like, I just kept looking at them like, is this happening right now? And so after that, it was crazy. There's a Spotify as an artist. There's a Spotify for artists app that you can get, and that's how you kind of interface with Spotify as an artist. And there's a cool feature they have, which is how many people are listening right now. And I remember opening it up, and right after the show ended, and there was like 850 people listening right now, which the most I get. The most I've had since then is about 20. But I was just like, oh my gosh, 850. I couldn't even. I could never imagine the magnitude of that show. I knew it was big, but then I was in the middle of a big tree job. I had a bunch of equipment rented. I had a couple of excavators rented. I had like 4 guys working with me for a week and a half. So the next morning, I had to do stuff. I had equipment rented. And I remember being out there and getting a call from a lady that I forget what her name was, but me and my buddies prank call each other all the time. And she was like, I'm with iTunes, and we're wondering if there was a non-explicit, because the song says, can I say one cuss
Oh yeah,
word?
yeah, yeah.
The song
This is a show
says
about
shit.
drinking, so.
So, all right, the song says shit in it, and so therefore it's explicit. And I got this call from this lady, and she's like, we're wondering if there's a non-explicit version because it's in the top 40 on iTunes charts right now. And I'm like, oh, this is one of my buddy's girlfriends. They're fooling with me. So I was like, hell no, there ain't no non-explicit version, and just hung up. I'm like, hey, why are they screwing with me? This is my day, I just had my song on Yellowstone. About 30 minutes later, she called back, and I figured out, oh my gosh, it really is. And it was just insane. And my email, especially because it was on my little website, which was super ghetto at the time. It was actually pretty ghetto until about 6 months ago. But my email was just blowed up with all people. I still haven't looked through all of them. Like a lot of different random people, like songwriters from everywhere. Like, hey, can we write together? And I had a couple of like record labels who had emailed me trying to start a conversation with me, and publishing companies. And weeding through that as somebody who knew nothing about the music business was just, I mean, I don't have a manager, nothing. So it was just insane, man. It was, I think the coolest part though was my father, Milt, who's passed away now. He died of cancer about 3 years ago, and he had been diagnosed with cancer not long before that show came on, and like seeing how proud that made him was probably the coolest part of it to me. Because I think that's when he was like, "All right, he might make it," you know. And that was both of my parents really, and all my family. I think the coolest thing about it to me was seeing how proud it made my family and my friends and all that. And I was proud of myself a little bit, but that was way cooler than me being happy with myself, you know.
Well, and you know, for you, I mean, obviously that's a huge moment, and you're able to do some different things. You know, you kind of followed that up. I think in 2023, you won the Texas Songwriter U. So, I mean, to have that little bit of momentum, what was that like to kind of see some of that success? You know, like you said, you may have been a little pessimistic, or at least seeing the glass as just half. Like
Yeah,
what was it like to start having that kind of success and getting recognized by other people?
it was awesome. I One of the coolest parts was I started charging a lot more money to go play gigs, which was really nice. I was like, man, I don't have to do as much tree work. I can go from 5 or 6 days a week to 2 or 3 days a week. And yeah, it all happens. I was just totally unprepared for it, man. Like if I were knowing what I know now, if I was to have another song on Yellowstone or Landman or one of his big shows, that's that big, I think I could really spin it into a lot more. But at the time, I was just kind of clueless. So there was a slow process of figuring out, like, okay, who do I need? Okay, I need to find a booking agent to help me with some of this, and that's still a battle. I don't even have a booking agent right now. I'm talking to a couple, but trying to figure out how to capitalize or how to get to turn that opportunity into forward momentum, and it really is a process over a couple of years. And I'm fortunate, man, that show is so popular and like still this. It's been a couple of years, but still to this day, when I tell people that, or if I'm talking to a venue who's booking me and they know that I had a song on there, it's still a big deal because there's so many fans of that show, and it opened the door to a lot of like co-writing opportunities with people that I don't think I would have ever got a chance to write songs with, and some of those have become my friends. And I've learned a lot from them and just people in the business that it's so hard to get heard nowadays, and for people to even listen to your songs. It's hard to know who to send your songs to, and even harder to get them to listen because there's so many people making music. So having that on my resume is just like a huge leg up for me, and there's a drastic difference from before that and after that for sure.
Well, and you mentioned it. You've been doing this for a good little while, whether that's full time, in 2020. But I mean, you've been writing, you've been doing stuff. I know it's been kind of a journey that's had some tough spots. I mean,
Yeah.
at one point, I believe you lost your best friend, and that kind of did some things. What's kept you, or what has it been like to kind of keep pushing forward and finding those good moments?
Well, I'll tell you, yeah, there's definitely been some lows. My friend that you referred to, Colt Bruce, we were in a car accident when I was 23, and he passed away. And yeah, that was a big part of me not having the confidence to want to put myself out there. After that, it just really took the wind out of my sails, and I turned even more to songwriting in my personal life just to help me kind of get over a lot of those things, and the sorrow of losing somebody that's that close to you because we were like brothers, and I mean trauma and all that stuff. But it makes me appreciate some of the things that are happening now so much more, man. Like it helps me look look on the good times even more and be like way more grateful. Because when you've lived some life, you know, and you've had a journey, which most people do in some way or another. None of us have the same journey, but you know, I hear, especially since being in Nashville, a lot of stories and things and kind of whispers and scuttlebutt about the music industry. And of course, there's a lot of young people in the last few years who had a few viral TikTok videos, and then they're all of a sudden they're famous. And it's very interesting to hear some of those stories. And I don't think they have any idea how valuable the opportunities they've been given are, and they, you know, might squander them. And I think I might have too if I was in their shoes. I'm not certainly not above it on any sense. I think it's just the perspective I have is a lot different because of the years I spent before Yellowstone or any of that, and the lows make the highs so much better, man. I mean, even losing my dad a few years back, that's a tough one. And I had a really close relationship with my dad. I even got a couple of songs about him on the second part of the album. Um, but you know, I like to think that he'd be proud of me, and I believe he is, and I believe he's looking down. And same thing with my friend Colt. I think about that a lot. So a lot of times I think about, man, I'm not only doing this for myself, but I'm doing it for them, and I want to make them proud because I'm here for a reason, you know. And I haven't totally figured out what that is, but I know it's got something to do with, at least at this stage of my life, with writing songs and singing them, because that's the only way that I've found that I can get a whole room of people to listen to me, and I can tell my stories, and you know, afterwards they'll come up and, man, that song you played about your dad, you know, big old tough burly guys, they'll shed a tear, you know, and tell you about their life. And there's really nothing else that I've found that I can do that can impact people like that. So that's one of my favorite parts about it.
Well, and you know, like I said at the top, you're putting out a new album, two-part album, February and April, called The Honkiest of Tonkers.
Yeah.
What's it been like to work on this project and you know, kind of get to this point where you're going to set it free?
Man, it's really cool. So the record is a combination of, I thought about doing one big record with all these songs on it, but I'm like, man, I'd like to break it down a little bit more. And I tried to organize the songs on each one. I think they're both records are a mix of songs that I recorded in Texas and then some in Tennessee, and it's kind of two sides of me and two sides of my sound. Um, I think they go together well and everything like that. I don't think there's just you're not going to hear one and be like, "Oh my gosh, is that the same guy?" But you'll definitely hear a difference in the themes and the style of them, and then also just sonically, there's some diversity on the record. So you got everything from your more polished mainstream ish country. It's all pretty traditional, and then some more gritty, you know, barroom type sounding stuff. Which that song "Honkiest of Tonkers" definitely falls into that category. The title track, it's not polished at all, but it's one of my favorites, and people really love it. Like when I play it, and it makes people smile, and I like that. Like writing songs that are fun too, not just all serious and sad or all about love and all that. Sometimes it's fun to just write some, talk a little smack, and write a funny song.
Absolutely. And that first part comes out on February 21st, and it features your latest song that you put out, Watching You Burn, along with The Honkiest of Tonkers and Peterbilt Pipe Dream as
Yeah.
well. I had to kind of slow that one down before I butchered it, butchered it. So what can people expect kind of on that part one then?
Well, I got two trucking songs on there, which I love the trucking songs. That's just a part of country music history. I think there was Smokey and the Bandit and Jerry Reed and then C.W. McCall before him, and I wanted to kind of keep that tradition alive. I guess in a sense, I know there's other guys doing it too. I'm not the only one. There's guys like Tony Justice out there, but those and the singles off this record. So, like you say, the first one that came out already is "Watching You Burn." Um, which I'm really excited about that. I've never had a song do so well in the first week. We're not even a week through yet, and it's like, okay, it's getting me excited for the rest of the record because I'm like, hopefully it'll keep building. Second one is Do You, and third one is called Bad Girl Good, and they've really got that traditional, smooth kind of the buzzword right now is 90s country, and I think all that means is just good traditional country music with modern recording equipment. I think that's kind of what 90s country was and what people are referring to with that. So definitely that traditional sound for sure on part one, especially, and especially with those singles. That's what I was going for because I'm like, man, I've got some people that I'm blessed enough to have Aristo Media helping me promote it. They've taken me under their wing and taken a chance on me. And so I've got more exposure to all this mainstream stuff now. So I wanted to pick the singles of songs that I thought, okay, I want to be traditional because that's what I'm all about, but I want them to be songs that maybe could get some radio play, or get on some of those big Spotify playlists. And it paid off the first one. Hopefully, the other two go that way. But Spotify put it on their hot new country or all new country, which is like, man, John Party and Chris Stapleton, like all them kind of guys are on there. And then there's old Garrett, the independent artist from Texas. So it's working so far.
Well, and it's a great song, and then the second part comes out on April 11th. It features "This Way of Life," which off of Yellowstone. She loves horses. Give Dad a call. So what can people expect on that second part?
I think the second part is more. There's definitely a couple of songs on there that might fit the kind of category that I was just talking about, but definitely more of heartfelt songs. I mean, "This Way of Life," which was on Yellowstone, re-recorded it just because when I recorded that song, it was 30 minutes after I wrote it. It was a demo, so now that I've played it a lot more, I feel like I play it and sing it better and redid it. And that song's near and dear to my heart. And definitely personal. And then, like you said, "Give Dad a Call," about wishing I could give my dad a call after he passed away. That song means a lot to me. And "She Loves Horses," about a relationship I was in. And the hook, I'll give you a little. So the hook is actually "She loves horses, but she hates me," and I'm excited about that song to see what it does because I feel like it's one of my better written songs. And now that everything cowboy and western is so popular again, it's like, hey, that song might have some mainstream appeal. So we'll see.
I was gonna say, getting to listen to the albums. There's some good songs that people are gonna be. I don't want to say surprised, but I think they're gonna really love. And these the two-part album kind of features a mix of those new songs and the fan favorites that you've kind of put out. Why did you decide to kind of do a blend of them and maybe not do just an all one or the other?
Well, that's a good question. I think I wanted to, for a couple of reasons. A lot of those songs, I just really love them, and for it being my debut album, like I'm thinking, 5 or 10 years from now, and you look back, I wanted them to be incorporated in that because I feel like they're foundational to like my style and my sound. And also, like I said, with Aristo coming along and Christy Walker, she's just one of the best publicists in Nashville, and she's been helping me. And I think having just been putting these songs out on my own before this and basically just uploading them online and asking God for people to listen to them. I didn't have any strategy for promoting them or marketing. So, like a lot of people, unless they're already fans of my music, have never heard those songs, and especially like people in the business. I mean, even folks like you and a lot of these interviews that I've been doing, to kind of introduce those folks to the stuff that I've already got out and have it all on one album that's in one place. Because the way these streaming services work, if you just release singles, unless it's one of your top 3 or 4 songs, a lot of times people don't even see it. Um, at least like Spotify and stuff, they just show your top 3 or 4 tracks, And some of these songs I feel like kind of slip through the cracks, but I know people like them because when I play live, and the people always love them. So I'm like, let's try to give a couple of these ones a shot again, and remastering and remixing some of them and really getting them just how I wanted them.
Well, and two, what I also find interesting about this album, you're either a solo writer or a co-writer on every single one of those songs. How important is it for you to be that involved in those songs too?
Man, it's everything. I mean, I don't even have any interest in doing this at any level if I'm not doing songs that I've written. I mean, if you was to hypothetically, if I got a call from some big record label tomorrow and they said we're gonna make you the biggest star in the world, but the only prerequisite is you got to record other people's songs that were written by other people. I would honestly say no, um, because to me that's really what it's all about. And it's just something cool about writing a song that's about your life, and it's like being able to write a diary or a journal, and then a way to share it with the world. The sad parts, the funny parts, all those things, and for other people to connect to them. It's just a totally different feeling than I would think it would be if it was somebody else's song. Even if a lot of people who no hate or anything towards artists who do record other people's songs, because I really hope one of these days that I can write songs for other artists too. So I don't want to poo-poo on that. And I'm not saying that one day I might not record an outside song on an album or something, but for me, the main core of my music is always going to be songs that I wrote, or that I co-wrote with people.
Well, like you said, it's your life. You're able to kind of share a part of yourself, and you've been able to also do that on a wide variety of stages, from flea markets, country fairs, you name it. What's been the best part about being up there on stage?
Man, I think just honestly, all the funny things that happen, the people watching, I got stories, about watching people fight and seeing people do all kind of crazy stuff. But I think just getting up there, and when people, and it started happening a lot more in Nashville because playing a lot more of these songwriters rounds and like more listening room environments, not so much just the rowdy honky tonks that we got back here in Texas. So people will listen to a song and they'll come up to you, and I can usually tell, like, we get done playing, and I'll see a guy kind of, it's usually guys, kind of snaking up and be like, man, that song, that one song, it reminded me of this, or it hit close to home. And like, to me, that's what it's all about. Or whenever you release a song, like with this Watching You Burn song that I just released, I've gotten a handful of messages, quite a few actually, of people that, wow, this song so powerful. I went through the exact same situation. And like, it's just a cool thing, man, for people to appreciate and connect with what you're doing. And it makes you not feel alone in the world. Like when you start writing about what you're going through, and other people are identifying with it, you're like, well, maybe I'm not too crazy.
Not at all, and it's awesome when you get to have songs that really do truly connect with folks. And at the top of the show, I always like to ask what your favorite drink is. We found out Folgers. You're a simple man. Um, I always love asking this too toward the end, and it's always interesting to see what people say. What's your favorite song to perform these days, whether it's yours or someone else's?
Boy, I'll tell you, it'd definitely be one of mine. But I am partial. I'm a little bit biased, but I think right now, it'd probably be This Way of Life, the one that was on Yellowstone, because I love the message of the song, and the fact that it got to get so much exposure is so cool. And like you and me were talking about earlier, like growing up in the ranching and rodeo world, and that's what that song's about, and how this way of life looks like it might be dying from the outside in, but when you're involved in it, you realize no, it's still alive and well. And there's a lot of people who are going to be farming, they're going to be ranching, they're going to be doing that no matter what. And it's multi generational, and it's never going to change in that regard. People are going to keep doing it. And man, I actually had a cool experience in October. This guy, he came up to me after I got done playing, and and he said, "Man, I was going through a really tough time in my life." And he was a rancher, runs a big cattle ranch. And he said, I had been divorced, and all this bad stuff was happening. And he said I was contemplating, killing myself. And that song came on my Spotify playlist. And he said, I'm not gonna say that it totally. He said, but that was when I was like, I can't do that. Like, and I've never had anybody tell me anything like that. And I said, man, if that's the whole reason that I'm even doing music, if that's it, if I never become big, successful, famous artist, that might be the whole reason that I was doing this, and I'm fine with that.
I was gonna say making a difference in folks' lives, and you got a lot going on. Like I said, Honkiest of Tonkers Part 1 coming out February 21st, Part 2 April 11th. So you got that coming, some new songs coming along the way here in the next few months with that. But what else can folks expect from you in 2025?
Well, I got a few things going on. I'm gonna be playing at CMA Fest, which I'm super excited about. I never played there, never even been to CMA Fest, so that's a big deal they have in Nashville. And then I've got a whole list of shows lined up here in Texas for people to. If you follow me on social media, like I got all the social medias. Usually, like Instagram is best for figuring out when I'm playing. Like TikTok's not really made for that, or it's harder to, I can put like my monthly calendar, my monthly posters up on Instagram here this spring or summer. Pretty slow time of the year right now. I'm mostly doing a lot of writing and doing things around this album, putting that out, trying to do interviews and things like that. I'm playing at I just found out the other day a guy named John Randall, who's a phenomenal producer and writer from Nashville. I ran into him on Saturday, and he invited me to a thing called the Mac Jack McConaughey. It's a charity event in Austin. It's Matthew McConaughey, Jack Ingram, and the old UT football coach Mac Brown. And I'm gonna be playing something at that. I'm not quite sure what, but he said be there and bring your guitar. And I'm like, man, hanging out with Matthew McConaughey and them guys sounds all right to me. So I'm pretty excited about that. And that's like a ticketed thing. So if people want to support the charity and get tickets, by all means, go ahead and do that, and stay tuned on all the other social medias to figure out where I'm playing at.
Well, Garrett, man, I can't wait to see what 2025 has in store for you. And folks, if you haven't, give a listen to his songs. I think you will enjoy those, and I can't wait for Honkiest of Tonkers to come out. And man, thanks for sharing your journey and just the fun part of life that you're having.
Man, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's been easy. I can't believe we've been talking this long. It feels like we've only been on here 10 minutes.
See, good music, good conversations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, brother, thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
Find more from Hops and Spirits at hopspirits.com.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.